Hey guys, welcome back to Coffee and Questions. I'm so glad you joined us. Remember, Coffee and Questions is an opportunity for us to talk about the questions that you have about Christianity, about the Bible, about anything like that. So it's not just me coming to preach to you. This is about a conversation. So if you have a question over what you think I said, you want me to go deeper, you think I was wrong about something, tell me. I enjoy a good conversation, and so let's just engage in that as we continue now. Last week we started off a conversation on how were people saved before Jesus, before he came to earth and died on the cross and everything like that. How were people saved? And we talked last week about what is salvation, and this idea that salvation is intended to save us from the judgment for our sins, for our rebellion against God. It also is to save us from our own sinful nature that continues to cause us to act in a way that is contrary to what God would have us to do, to act in a rebellious way, so to speak. And that ultimately the end goal of salvation is not just to pay the penalty for our sins, but to put us back into a right relationship with God. And so that was the point of it. I actually made a video about this yesterday, and I was watching it, and I realized I was making this way more confusing than it needed to be. All right, something that we need to understand about the cross, about Jesus dying on the cross, is that there is nothing, almost nothing, that can limit the power of Jesus' death on the cross. Almost nothing. It's not limited by time. It's not limited by the number of people. Jesus didn't just die for those who are currently born and those who are going to be born in the future. He actually paid for the sins of all people, even those prior to him. But that doesn't mean that everybody who was born prior to him gets a free pass. In fact, Romans chapter 4, Paul takes up this very discussion. He tells us, he talks about Abraham and how Abraham was justified by faith. By what? By faith in God, is this idea of believing in God. When God promised to Abraham an heir that would come, Abraham believed him, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Romans 4 tells us. Now, some people think that maybe the law had something to do with salvation in the Old Testament, and that's easy to get confused because the law, was a big part of the Jewish life. But Galatians 3:11 actually tells us, "Now it is evident that no one is justified before God by the law, for," and now he quotes Habakkuk here, who's an Old Testament prophet. Habakkuk says, "For the righteous shall live by faith." You see, even in the Old Testament, the path to salvation was faith in God, faith in a Redeemer who was going to come. And so their salvation was very much like ours. While we look back at Jesus who died on the cross for salvation, they looked forward to this. And we know that from the very beginning of time, early in Genesis, throughout the Old Testament, there are prophecies about the coming Redeemer, the coming Messiah, the one who would save them, the one who would crush Satan's head, and all those sorts of things. All right. For example, Job, who was probably a contemporary of Abraham's, or somewhere in that time frame, maybe even older than Abraham, declared, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and at last he will stand upon the earth." So we see that salvation for those who were born before Jesus was actually the same as those who are born now. All right, it was based upon this looking for the Messiah and this faith, a faith that is more than just belief, but a faith that is something that causes people to act, a belief that makes them act. Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Why? Because he trusted in God. He believed that it was going to happen. He acted upon it. That's what Hebrews 11 teaches us. That's what James teaches us about faith, that faith is something that changes the way that we act. And so I hope that helps you. I hope that helps answer your question. I'm going to put down below in the description a website that I use for reference on this. They answer a lot of different Bible questions also on that website. So it's a great little resource. You can check them out. And like I said, If you've got more questions, if you've got more thoughts, if you want to go deeper, please let me know. And I'd love to just dive deeper into these discussions. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.